we get to discuss what the building process entails. We get to have an understanding of some of the common construction failures we've been experiencing, not just in Ghana, but then in other parts of the world as well. Why do some buildings collapse even at the construction phase? We'll also get to explore why some buildings like the ones at Buena Vista Homes are able to stand the test of time even after living in it for decades. There are varied reasons to each side of the coin. We'll get to explore all these and more in this edition of the Buena Vista Homes Real Estate Show. We'll go for a break at this point. When we come back, I'll introduce my guest. This is the Buena Vista Homes Real Estate Show with me, Ifia Fusua. We are back shortly. Welcome back. You're still watching the Buena Vista Homes Real Estate Show with me, Ifia Fusua. I have with me two special guests. Gentlemen, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Right. So I'll start with you, Kwabena. What are the processes involved in construction in the real estate industry in general?
Generally, for any project, you want to start off by doing a feasibility study.
Right.
Essentially, you want to know whether this project is viable, because you want to invest money in a project, but you want to make sure that you make some returns from it. Wow. So the process starts off with, you know, a feasibility study. Obviously, you probably have identified a parcel of land you want to work with. Either you've purchased it or you intend to purchase it. And once you're done with your feasibility, you then have to assemble a team of professionals. So you put together your architects, your engineers, and so on, who will come up with a schematic design. Again, the design will help you to estimate your cost. How much is this project going to cost me? And once you've done with that, that cost feeds back into the feasibility study. You know, obviously you're looking at who are your clients, what's your target market, what kind of houses are they looking for, or what kind of projects should you be developing and all that. So you're assessing also the market, what's your market, right. What price ranges should you be selling, developing your project for. So once you're done with the schematic designs, again, for the ordinary person, that's what you call the pictorial impressions. Okay. You know, part of that is a pictorial impression. So it helps you visualize your project, how it's going to look like when you're done, and so on. Once you're finished with that phase, again, it's at that stage that you want to sign it off and say, yeah, this looks good. This is the look and feel of what I want, you know, for my school project and so on. And at that stage, then you sign it off. Hopefully at that stage, you're not going to make any more changes. You've gone back and forth with the architects and the design team. And at that stage, you freeze the design. Essentially, you're saying, from this stage onwards, no more changes to what I have. If you don't freeze the design and you want to continue to make changes, it could increase your budget. Right. So you're free to make the changes. It will just prolong your development period and, you know, also increase cost. So once you've crossed that stage, now you are more or less into the design development phase, where you're doing all the detailed drawings, you're looking for suppliers. Where am I getting my doors from? You know, are they on the market? Do I have to import them? So those are the next phase of decision making, you know, through the process. And then once you've gone through the whole design development and detailing, then you start to look at your construction documentation, because then you are finalizing all your drawings, your bill of quantities, your details. Okay. Again, depending on the type of project, at the feasibility stage or maybe a little later, you may want to do stuff like your soil investigation. So you want to determine what is the nature of the ground I'm going to be building on. Is it hard pan? Is it soft? Will that influence the design, the structural design? And again, in your introduction, you said something about buildings collapsing. And so it's quite a complex process, and it's important to get professionals involved, you know. because some of the decision making is very technical.
Right.
And if you're going to spend a lot of money, you want to make sure that you are getting good value for money. So you want to involve professionals in the whole process. You also will have to start to look at your building permits. So obviously engage your metropolitan or municipal assembly. They'll give you a requirement of documentation that you need. So start that process early as well, so that you can get your permits and all that. So once you have your construction documentation in place, you have your permits, you can then invite your contractors. You know, there are various methods of engaging contractors.
Okay.
If it's a personal project, you can just select somebody. If it's a project, you want to go through a tender process to select a contractor and so on, you know. So once you've gone through all that, essentially at that stage, the process ends with the selection of a contractor. And you continue to work with your design team, you know, the architects, engineers, and so on, throughout that whole process. So once the contractor is engaged, you sign your contracts, he'll have to provide you all the necessary insurances and guarantees and so on. And then you hand over the site, you know, work starts.
Right. It looks like a very long process.
Yes, it's a long process depending on the size of your project. Some projects, this whole process can take up to 2 years.
Okay.
Just the pre-contract, all the activities till you get to construction phase. For much simpler projects, it can take maybe up to 6 months.
Okay.
So it depends on how complex and how, you know, if you take a project, say like the National Theatre, for example, I mean, that whole process of design and detailing and, you know, going through all the difficult and different stages can take up to 2 years for a big complex project.
Right. Yeah. Now, I would want us to delve a lot deeper into the various stages you've mentioned: the feasibility, the schematic, design stage, the design development, pre-construction and all. But let me come to you, Sammy. What are some mistakes you see people do in trying to put up a project, particularly in relation to the stages in the building process? What are the common mistakes you see people do?
Yeah, I think one of the main things that people try to avoid is the engagement of professionals in the entire building process. Many people think that it's expensive to engage professionals, but they end up paying for it in some other ways. For me, you know, if you were undertaking a building project, it's capital intensive. And I have always advised people to always engage professionals. Eventually, it becomes less expensive with the involvement of professionals. I've had examples of people who would have made very serious mistakes, you know, if they hadn't engaged professionals. And like you also said in the beginning, people undertake projects without that kind of consideration, and then their buildings collapse, for instance. If it does collapse, you have to build it all over again. And that's a lot more money. Yes, you would pay for the services of a professional, but eventually, it will save you money.
It will save you. You get value for your money. I hope you're enjoying the conversation. We're streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube as well. We'll go for a break and return shortly with more. You're still watching the Buena Vista Homes Real Estate Show with me, Efia Fusua. We are back shortly. Welcome back. You're watching the Buena Vista Homes Real Estate Show with me, Efia Fusua. The show is proudly sponsored by Buena Vista Homes, where homes are not built but crafted. I still have with me Kwabena and Sammy via explaining and helping us to understand what the building process entails, just so you avoid some common construction failures we continue to see in the real estate industry. Welcome back, gentlemen. Right, so let's move to the next stage in the building process. From the feasibility stage, where do we move to next?
From the feasibility stage, once you've established that yes, this project is a good investment, I want to go ahead and invest in it, you have to start to assemble your team of professionals together. So Sami spoke about it earlier. Your architects, your engineers, your quantity surveyors, the other professionals you'll be working with, the built industry professionals you'll be working with. And essentially, they start to put together the ideas as you work with them. You know, if it's a residential property, for example, they'll take you through a process, you know, where they want to understand, yes, you want to build your dream house, your 5-bedroom house. What kind of house do you want? You know, how do you like to live your life? What they'll be doing is a reflection of your lifestyle. Right. So if you wake up in your morning and the first thing you like to do is your cup of tea or coffee, an architect could ask you, where do you like to have your tea or coffee? You sit on a balcony, you sit in bed, you know. So those kinds of questions will then help them to conceptualize your design and what you want, you know, for your house. So that whole stage is what we'll call the schematic design stage, where you're starting to conceptualize and, you know, develop essentially the scheme, as we call it, you know, for the project. Okay,
so when clients come to Buena Vista Homes, you sit them down and walk them through all these processes?
So with Buena Vista, we have standard designs we've already developed. So we give you options to choose from those designs. However, we've had clients who come and have their own peculiar, you know, needs. And so we sit down with them and we kind of adapt, you know, what we already have, or if we have to do a new design, we'll do it, you know, and work with you so that we meet your goals and aspirations.
Right. Let me come to you, Sami. What then is the next stage after the schematic
so
stage?
Like Kwabena said earlier, once you're done with the schematic stage, then you go more into actual design. Because at that point, the design has been frozen. All right. That's the stage where you do the detailing of the works. It's important that you freeze a design at a point, because when the architect begins to design, it informs the other professionals as to what they do next. For instance, the electrical engineer will be designing after the architect. The structural engineer will be designing after the architect. So if the architect hasn't frozen his design, it means that they cannot go on to bring finality to what they are doing. And so it becomes important that a design is frozen. Then after that, every one of them gets into detailing out exactly what eventually will be used for final construction. So that's where everybody else then comes on board, and all the professionals begin to make their input into the works. What the architect does is to give you the overall general concept of the design, but the structural engineer, the electrical engineer, the mechanical engineer will also then begin to feed into the design that the architect has brought up.
Maybe Kwabena would share more light on the design stage, since you're an architect. What are some of the experiences you can share in that regard for clients who come to Buena Vista Homes? What are some of the common experiences you can share?
It's interesting. I mean, you meet different kinds of clients. Some are, say, people with very young families, so they have very young kids. Some have gone through midlife, you know, teenage kids. Some are in the, you know, much later stages of close to retirement, so their needs are different. So you just have different kinds of clients, you know, and our objective is to try and meet the aspirations of these clients. So from a design perspective, you want to sit with them and understand what it is they want and how best you can respond to, you know, those desires, you know, through design. I mean, size of spaces, color, texture, finish, even lighting, ventilation.
Lighting. Okay.
Yeah, those are all design elements that you will consider in your engagements with people, you know.
It's interesting. You factor in the lighting that would be put in a house, even at a design stage.
Yes, absolutely. You have to. Even the size of windows.
Okay.
You know, and things like that.
What would influence the size of window? I'm a slim girl, so would you give me a smaller window?
Oh no, it's a reflection of, for example, how much light or ventilation you want in a space.
Okay.
If your windows face the east and you wake up and you draw your curtains and the sun hits you full blast,
right,
it may not be very desirable, you know. So those are all things that you look at. I guess for the lay people, they overlook lots of these things. But I've been to houses where you have very dark rooms and spaces. You always have to keep the lights on. Otherwise, you can hardly find your way around the room. You know, and those are common mistakes that people make. But again, then it has an impact on your lights, your electricity bills, and so on. So don't overlook the need to engage an architect. You can't have a very nice hairstyle if you don't go to a salon, presumably, or if you are sick, you want to go to a doctor. You know, if you're building a house, you want to talk to your architects or your engineers. You know, don't overlook that process. Like Sami said, you might think you're saving some money, but in the long run, it's going to turn out to be a very expensive mistake that, you know, you've embarked on. So it's extremely risky not to involve professionals in your work.
So you're still watching the Buena Vista Homes Real Estate Show, proudly sponsored by Buena Vista Homes, where homes are not built but crafted. We are streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube as well. We go for a break and we are back shortly. Do stay. Welcome back. You're watching the Buena Vista Homes Real Estate Show with me, Ifia Fusua. Today we are discussing the building process, and I still have with me Kwabena and Sami, the brains behind Buena Vista Homes. Sami, let me come back to you now. After the pre-construction stage, you move on to the procurement stage. Talk to us about what really happens at that stage.
All right, so this is procurement of works. After you have your designs, after your professionals have all made their necessary inputs, now you need somebody who will build the structure for you, or undertake the project for you. Like Kwabena said earlier, depending on the complexity or how big the project is, there are various procurement methods you can use. I mean, there are people who will just say, oh, I know contractor A, he built this for that person, so I'm just going to go with this guy to build for me. So he goes directly to him, says that this is the design I have and I want to build that on my plot or on my land. Can you do that for me? He says yes. And then he says, okay, I'll do that for you, but at this cost. So you negotiate with the person, and then the person goes ahead to build it for you. That is a direct appointment, direct negotiation, and then literally you've procured that contractor to build for you. However, if the project is a bit more complex and has more associated interests from different people, you may not just want to appoint somebody, because the risk in just appointing only one person is that the person could give you a very high estimate, and you may not have any other estimate to compare with. And so we go into what we call tendering or bidding. All right. Before you get into bidding or tendering, a tender document or a bidding document would have had to be put together. In that document, you would have the specifications, you would have the bills of quantities, you have the conditions of contract. All of that come into one document that is put out. Some of the bidding processes could be selective or it could be open. If it is a selective tender, it means that you have identified specific contractors who have capacity or capability to undertake that project, and you invite them. So if there are 3 contractors that you feel can undertake this project, you invite them, and then they come to put in a bid for you. And then when you have obtained the bids from them, you do what we call an evaluation to see which bid, you know, is more advantageous to you as a client. There are other public works that you are enjoined to rather make it a public and open tender, and in that case you advertise it openly and you give some conditions or criteria for qualification to put in a bid. And if it is an open tender, most of the time you find them in the newspapers advertised. And then any contractor who feels that he has those or he qualifies, you know, based on the conditions that you put there, can put in a bid, you know, and then the consultants will evaluate and then make a choice of who is able to undertake the works. So there are various ways you can do that. If it's my own house I'm building, but I've gotten all the designs and everything, I may not go to that full extent, you know, of putting a bidding document together and all of that, but I could use again 2 people that I choose to give me different bids, based upon which I can say, all right, this one sounds better, or the value here is, or the cost here is cheaper, so I would want to go with this one or the other, or go full-blown bidding process to be able to procure a contractor. Under procurement, we have there are 3 different types of procurement, and it's important that we put it out, because most people presume procurement to be purchasing of you know, iron rods and stuff. It's not only just that. We have procurement of works, which is what we're discussing now. Then we have procurement of goods, and then we have procurement of services. So the procurement of works is getting contractors to undertake a particular work. And then procurement of goods would be, you know, looking to buy iron rods, cement, sand and stuff. And then procurement of services is when a corporate body or somebody is looking to engage services of consultants and things like that. You know, the process they go through to engage them. That in itself also falls under procurement. But for this particular discussion, I think we're zeroing on procurement of works. And that is how you make a selection for who undertakes your work. Once you have your contractor selected, you do what we call the site handing over. You need to hand over the site to the contractor, give him all the drawings, all the specifications, all the bills of quantities, and then he gets to start work. In starting work, they normally would have the mobilization stage where they mobilize to site, then set up their site camps, you know, their storage facilities and all of that. And then we have what we call the ground breaking itself. At the ground breaking, that is where they do the setting out. To set out a site is to kind of lay out the various buildings or blocks, you know, transfer them onto the site, and then to hit the ground, what we all call like foundation. You know, you dig the ground, after digging the ground, you pour your concrete, you put in your reinforcements, and then you pour your concrete. But that part is a very important part of the entire building, because that is where the entire structure you're going to raise would have to be supported eventually. All right, so the entire weight above the structure is going to be supported by the foundation. Prior to it, like Kobna said earlier, the structural engineers, geodetic engineers would have all done their bit. You know, you would have tested the soil, found the strength and capacity of the bearing capacity of the soil and all of that. Once you have all of that set and the drawings have come out, then the supervisors will have to ensure that whatever is being built is in conformity with what is on the drawing. So it all starts with the foundation at that point. Dig the trenches, do your columns, do your if it's a strip foundation, it's a pad foundation, whatever type of foundation that has been designed in the drawings is exactly what you must go by.
Okay.
If anything has to change, it has to change with the approval of the professionals who are involved. Sometimes when people are undertaking projects by themselves, you know, they can go to site, even after drawings and everything have been done, they can go to site and say, oh, I've just realized that my kitchen is small.
Okay.
Open it a bit. When you do that, you are creating problems. You know, you cannot easily go to site and change because whatever you have has implications, as you know, implications to the various types of the building, parts of the building. Sorry, you change say the size of your kitchen, it has an impact on the roof at the top there. You know, so the professionals need to come in and advise that yes, we can change it or we cannot. All right.
Right.
So you do the foundation, you do the block in foundation, you do your filling, and then you cast your slab.
Okay. At the foundation stage,
yes,
there's a lot that happens there.
Yeah.
And I can tell there's a lot to share. We'll wrap up the conversation today and we'll bring the part 2 of this conversation. Thanks so much, Kwabena and Sami, and we'll see you next week. Bye.